Greetings, Captains here. I will teach you in this video how to get a big, thick and shredded back at home. Firstly, let's take a look at the anatomy of the back to understand how many muscles exist and what they do exactly. Now you know the muscles, and now it's time to explain to you how to target and train them all. But before we get into it, you should know that you will need a few items in order to truly gain muscle mass and get a big shredded back at home. And these tools are pull-up bar or anything to hang on to, a resistance band, and anything that can fit in the grip of your hand that weighs around 2.5 kg or 5 pounds. Usually all the muscles of the back works in unison based on the nature of the body, where there is an agonist and a synergist. An agonist, or a prime mover, refers to a muscle that is primarily or mainly responsible for producing a particular movement or action in the body. Meanwhile, a synergist muscle refers to a muscle or a group of muscles that assist the agonist, or the prime mover, in producing a particular movement. Synergists work together with the agonist muscle to help stabilizing the joints and control the movement of the bones during the exercise or other physical activities, and assist the agonist in generating force to succeed in performing the movement properly. For example, during the pull-ups, the agonist or the prime mover is the latissimus dorsi, and the synergist muscle are trapezius, rhomboids, teres major, posterior deltoid, biceps brachii, short and long head, brachialis and brachyradialis, and this is pretty much the difference between the agonist muscle and the synergist muscles. So we need to know, in order to engage all the muscles that are located in the back, you need to do the following movements. The first movement is shoulder rotation, as in shoulder external and internal rotation. This is for the rotator cuff muscles and mainly is done by using very light weights because they are very weak muscles and cannot generate huge forces, because they are mainly responsible for the stabilization of the shoulders and for the health and resistibility of rotator cuff tendons and ligaments of the shoulders to reduce the injuries, because they are usually neglected. Second is shoulder vertical abduction, as in lateral raises. Third is scapular retraction and shoulder horizontal abduction, as in banded real delt fly. Fourth is scapular upward rotation, as in banded standing military press. Fifth is going to be scapular downward rotation, as in pull-ups. Sixth and last is going to be scapular elevation and depression, as in banded shrugs. And that doesn't mean that we need to do an exercise for each of these movements. You can activate all of these movements into exercise or something. Because as I said, the human body works in unison, where the agonist lifts the majority of the load, while the synergist muscles assist the agonist in these lifts. Now we know everything about the back, from anatomy to the mechanics to how the body usually interacts with one another. Now it's time to implement all of these into your training schedule so you can benefit from it and get shredded or huge or whatever your goal is. I will pick from several studies from trustful and reliable sources the best and the most effective exercise for each muscle group in the back area. Beginning with the very first muscle at the top of the back, the trapezius. First of all, the trapezius is divided into three parts: upper, middle, and lower trapezius. The upper part is responsible for the scapular elevation, the middle part is responsible for the scapular retraction, and the lower part is responsible for the scapular depression. And as the conclusion of the first study that we have today states, the results would suggest that the upper trapezius is best activated with the shoulder shrug exercise, and it's mentioned that it was unilateral in the tablet, as you can see, meaning that it was a single arm shrug, but for some reason it didn't mention that in the conclusion. And the middle trapezius demonstrated the greatest amount of EMG activity, and if you don't know what's an EMG activity, it means electromyography, which is the tool that measures the activity of muscles. But as we were saying, that the greatest EMG activation for the activity for the middle trapezius was 2 exercises, but we will suffice with the most effective one, which is overhead arm raise exercise in prone position. And for the lower trapezius, it was also the overhead arm raise in prone position produced the most EMG activity. And that's it for the trapezius. Now it's time for the middle and posterior deltoids. In this muscle group, there will be 2 exercises to target both of them, and in one of them, they will be capable of targeting both of them simultaneously. Beginning with the banded real delt fly. The banded real delt fly target the posterior deltoid, middle part of the trapezius, and rhomboids. And if you're going to perform it whether on a machine or using a resistance band, do it using a neutral grip rather than a pronated grip, because the study says neutral grip is more effective as it activates the posterior deltoid more than pronated grip. As you can see here, it says results showed that mean normalized EMG activity for the posterior deltoid was significantly greater in neutral compared with pronated. Mean normalized EMG activity for the infraspinatus is also significantly greater in neutral position compared with pronated position. Greater mean normalized EMG activity in the middle deltoid during neutral compared with pronated position. Therefore, whilst doing the real dead flyer exercise, use the neutral grip to focus on the middle and posterior deltoid plus the infraspinatus as a beneficial addition, and activate the rotator cuff muscle before starting the exercise to stabilize the shoulder and scapula to perform the exercise properly and minimize the possibility of injuries. The second exercise is lateral raise. The lateral raise is mainly done for the middle deltoid, but with a simple modification you can specify the muscle that you want to emphasize more. If you look at this research, it says different lateral raise variation and frontal raise had unique muscle recruitment when performed by competitive bodybuilders. Anterior deltoid increased its activity when the humerus was rotated externally, while posterior deltoid when the humerus was rotated internally, and middle deltoid was more activated during lateral raise with straight versus flexed elbow. Lastly, upper trapezius showed greater activity when humerus tended to be rotated internally as an addition to the posterior deltoid. Thus, we conclude that if you want to focus on the posterior deltoid, internally rotate the arm while raising, and if you want to focus on the middle deltoid, then keep your arm in neutral position, but don't straighten it entirely, just slightly bend your elbow while lifting, keeping it around 15-degree angle to target the middle deltoid. And now for the muscles that are in the same place as the deltoids, but a dip deeper, the rotator cuff muscles. The rotator cuff muscles are responsible for the internal and external rotation of the arm and stabilizes the arm during any form of movement that the arm does. Now it's time to introduce you to the study that will determine which exercise is the best for the rotator cuff muscles. They brought 10 healthy individuals and tested 7 shoulder exercises to determine the most effective one for each muscle that's on the rotator cuff region, except for the subscapularis. But don't worry, I'm going to cover it in another study. And it turned out to be the best exercise for the infraspinatus and teres minor is side lying external rotation. And for the supraspinatus is prone horizontal adduction at 100 degrees with full external rotation. And an almost identical study that speaks about the muscle that was in the previous study, which is the subscapularis, and it says that the exercise that recruits the subscapularis the most is diagonal internal rotation. And don't pay attention to the push-up plus because it won't be suitable for a day where you train your back. And if you cannot perform properly the diagonal internal rotation, because it might be a little bit difficult to master the movement, just do ordinary banded internal rotation without complicating things for you to avoid the possibility of shoulder injuries. And lastly, the latissimus dorsi. This study was made by a university of Wisconsin where they brought 19 male subjects to participate in a study. And in that study, the results for the most effective exercise for the latissimus dorsi were the chin-ups and pull-ups. And it concludes in the discussion of the study that if wanting to specifically work the latissimus dorsi, the exercise of choice would be chin-ups and pull-ups. And another reason why they are so effective, they are so hard to perform. Most people cannot do 10 pull-ups or chin-ups in a row. That says a lot about the difficulty of these exercises, yet the effectiveness of these exercises as well. Now some people might wonder whether they should do wide pull-ups or shoulder width pull-ups or narrow pull-ups. This study will answer all of your questions regarding this topic. They brought 15 individuals and performed 6 repetitions of lats pull down, which is almost identical to the movement and muscle engagement of the pull-ups, and they performed it in 3 different grips: narrow and medium, which is shoulder width, and wide grip. And the study discovered that this study suggests a medium grip may have minor advantages over narrow or a wide one. And as you can see here, there is an insignificant advantage for the medium grip in almost all of these comparisons that are on the graph. Thus, whether if you are planning on doing chin-ups, pull-ups, or lats pull down, do it in a medium grip or shoulder width wide. So before we end this video, you're probably wondering why most of these exercises that I chose are closed chain exercise rather than open chain exercise. And if you don't know what's closed chain and open chain exercise, here's a simple and easy to understand definition and an example. The closed chains exercise involve the movement of a leg or arm while the limbs fixed in place, typically by being in contact with the ground or another immovable object like pull-ups or squats. And if you look at the word closed chained exercise, it means the movement of the exercise is closed, meaning part of the body during the exercise is fixed and immovable. And on the other hand, open chained exercises involve the movement of leg or arm and the limb while freely moving without any fixation like biceps curls. And if you look at the word open chained exercise, means the movement of the exercise is open, meaning all or the majority of the body is not fixed or freely movable. And now I hope you understood the definition. Let's speak about why most of these exercises, if not all of them, are closed chained exercises. First, it's almost impossible to do open chain exercises with bodyweight exercises. Most of them will be closed chained. Second reason is, based on the study, it says that it's much more beneficial for the entire body to be engaged in closed chain exercises, as it activates much more than one muscle that you're seeking to strengthen or empower simultaneously, as it states here and affirms what I'm saying in this study, that closed chain exercise of the upper extremity generated greater activation of the shoulder and trunk exercises compared to the open chained ones. However, if it was made on the lower body, it would have been as the following. Closed chain exercise of the lower extremity generated greater activation of the legs and trunk muscles compared to the open chained exercises. And that's what I wanted to finish the video with. Hope that was beneficial for you all. Also, if you want to see a video that's very similar to this one but targets the chest muscle, click on the video that's going to appear to you right now. If you want one-on-one personal training based on your goals and personal needs, click on the first link in the description and check out the offers before it's too late. And subscribe to the one that suits you. God bless.